Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ships at sea, it is time for another episode of Property of the Week from PropertyLens. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bob Frady, co-founder and CEO of PropertyLens, and with me, as always,
John Siegman, co-founder and president of PropertyLens. Almost forgot.
So Kanye West is selling off properties, some of his properties. We don't know how many he has, and we think that we've located his condo in Carlsbad.
In Calabasas.
Calabasas is the same
Another
thing.
place that starts with a C. That's by the ocean.
Calabasas, California. And we thought we'd take a look at it and see what we think about the property. Now, this is allegedly the Kanye condo, but we think it is. But we'll just say it's allegedly right now. So we don't,
Note, if we refer to it as the Kanye condo, it's always alleged Kanye condo.
Alleged. And here it is, 23500 Park Sorrento, Unit C34 in Calabasas. I ran this report today just to make sure that everything was still updated and proper. 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and 2,260 square feet. So let's take a look at our property. Here's all the identifying information. John, what's our snapshot telling us?
We've only got 2 owners in the last 15 years. The property is only 9 years old. What this sort of shows you is that it doesn't turn over often. So it's good. It's not a problem property. Tax increase over the last 6 years, a little higher than anticipated in California, thanks to Proposition 13. So we know that it's changed hands within the last 6 years. Insurance costs, pretty much close to the 7.4% per year average across the country, so not outrageous as far as increases go. Repairs, fairly moderate given the price of the condo itself. It's not a flip. Lots of building permits, yay. So they're keeping it up, or other people are keeping it up. You want to look for the ones that are unit specific. 2 possible damaging events. Those happen to be 2 wind events that happened earlier this year, and it's not in a flood zone. So there you go.
From a quick snapshot standpoint,
Not bad.
not bad. What do we got in the pros and cons standpoint? It's relatively new, modern construction. It's energy efficient. There's a low crime rate in the area. You've got good fire protection in that area. And you got lots of amenities in the community. If you want to see more, you can always hit the little drop-down button, and it'll give you more information. Now, on the bad side, John, what do we got?
Not necessarily bad. Let's just say less than good.
Less than ideal.
Well, welcome to California, particularly Southern California. We shake and we bake. You got earthquake risk, you got wildfire risk. You're not in the flood zone, but you are relatively close to one. Mold, you got an ocean. If you're near an ocean, it's going to be damp. And it never gets cold enough here to freeze the stuff out. So you always have a risk of mold. And then there's a property size discrepancy, which is probably the biggest concern on this list, because there's a difference between what the county assessor has to say and what the realtor has to say. And so you want to find out why this is. Sometimes it's just poor record keeping by the county. Sometimes it's an unpermitted extension. You got to find that out because lots of bad things can happen. Isn't that right, Mr. Frady?
I actually had a house that I didn't know this at the time when I bought it, because we didn't have all this fancy PropertyLens stuff. There was a size discrepancy between what the county or the city thought and what the realtor told me. Well, when I went to relist that house, it turns out there was an unpermitted bedroom that extended into the garage, and the city's like, that's not up to code. You're going to have to rip that out. So I had to pay to rip it out before I could sell my own house, which was a colossal pain in the neck. Not just from the fact that I had to do it, but it shrunk the square footage of my house, which was a total pain. So we've got some nice location benefits. We've got some property features. It's a contemporary design, as we shall see. Now, to some people, they like contemporary designs. John Siegman may not be a fan. Bob Frady may be a fan. Who knows? But it's very particular when you get into contemporary design with bespoke architectural elements. For those of you who don't speak the King's English, that means, custom. So recent updates. Yeah, it's fancy. It's fancy schmancy. So and premium's going to be about $3,600, and the repair cost is going to be about $17,500. So, John, what kind of questions would you want to be asking if you're looking at this property?
Oh, you'd be wanting to ask a ton of questions. These are the top 6. If you ever have a question about what you should ask, you can always ask Lens AI right down there in the bottom, because it will tell you the top 10, 20, 1500, whatever question number you want to put in there. It will give you in order the questions that you should ask. So when you look at this property, it's relatively new. It's made up to the current earthquake standards. You would want to know, is it insured? Because the structure itself for earthquake should be insured through the homeowners. Same for the other structure risks. So those are two things that you would want to ask about. It was very windy there earlier this year and the two wind events in early January. So you'd want to make sure that there was no damage to anything like shingles or any covering. The roof itself is a mixture of a couple of different things, so you want to make sure that that was taken care of. The permits themselves, are they closed? Are there stuff that's still open that hasn't been resolved? Because if you walk in and all of a sudden you want to do something and you go, hey, let's go do this, and then you find out you can't until you close other permits, that might be a problem, as one of us has experienced. And that's not me.
Once again, I got a bill that was 10 years old from the county. Like, this permit was never closed. You can't open a new one. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because the contractor just never closed it properly. It's like, ugh. So you got to check. And now the seller should check and make sure. But as the buyer, remember, everything is buyer beware. So you got to make sure that you are being as aware as you can be. All right. So from an inspected expense report, we got some termites. You want to just check for that. Everything else is just pretty maintenance oriented. We know everything is pretty new in this house. The HVAC system was upgraded. The water heater was upgraded a couple of years ago. So all the big things that you're going to worry about are pretty much taken care of. You still want to have a little reserve funds just in case, because you never know what's going to go on. But the number one thing that you would want to check on is termites, because termites love Southern California. And as we talked about, we've got some toxic exposure at this location, arsenic in the groundwater, mold issues, and PFA contamination in the drinking water. That should largely be mitigated by being on city sewer, but if you're really paranoid, then you'll do a water check on this house. Not enough to necessarily not want to buy the condo, but enough to make sure you're taking care of your family's health. And then, as we said before, we got wildfire and earthquake, termites. It's a 9-year-old house. The roof condition's unknown because it's part of the condo association, and no significant damaging events have occurred. Now, if you want, you can print a list of questions for the seller, or you can print a list of items to give to your inspector and say, make sure you check this out. So we get down to insurance. There's a range between $1,900 and $6,400. You got to talk to your insurance company, because different insurance companies will have filed rates that are different. So let's say you're with company XYZ, we'll call them, and you move from one house in California to this house in California, and you say, oh, I like these people, let's do the same thing. Are they giving me a fair deal on the condo? So that's one of the things that you want to check out. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. Now we get into something interesting. John, why don't we talk about the listing details? What do you see here?
I see that the market value is about $800,000 less than the listing price. When you live in Bob Frady's neighborhood, having a little cachet saying that you live in Kanye's condo, allegedly, carries weight. When you're, like me, that carries no weight. So do you really want to pay for that weight? That's up to you. This is a condo, as we'll see in the descriptor. They hired a really expensive architect to come in and do the interior treatment and the interior features. He's got a good name in LA if you're into modern. This is the person you should call. If you're not, then you're probably paying for a lot of stuff that, quite frankly, you're probably never going to get your money back on.
That's one big key thing. The second is that this listing is from July. It's now 108 days on the market. What does it mean when it's been on the market for a long time, John Siegman?
First thing is, it's overpriced. The second thing is, deals are falling apart. What we don't know is how many times people got to the table and couldn't get this over the line. But we can tell you that 15 to 20% of all contracted real estate deals right now in November of 2025 are falling out. They're
Falling out.
not,
Yep.
you've gone through, you've made offers, you've agreed, you've done all sorts of stuff, and they're not getting done. And a lot of that is just because people aren't comfortable because there's a lot of unknowns that you can eliminate with this report.
To me, that's an opportunity to negotiate. And usually people don't move on price for one of two reasons. Number one is because they're just insistent that eventually the market's going to come back and the pendulum will swing the other way and they'll get the price that they want. They have a number in their head and they're married to it. And the second is that they can't sell it for less for one reason or another. There may be obligations behind that would turn them upside down, so they hang on as long as they can. If you're on the market for 108 days, chances are you're overpriced. And to me, knowing this going in, like, that's an opportunity to negotiate. Now, maybe you get a box of Yeezys for autographed Yeezys come with the place, assuming that this is Kanye's condo.
I'd hope you'd at least get one of the Grammy Awards hanging on the wall.
There's all sorts of things that you can negotiate that are not necessarily reflected in the list price. It's negotiation time. It's 108 days, too long. Here's the description. Vincent Van Dyson, very fancy architecture. So, and all sorts of nice things, good appliances, all that stuff. It's in Los Angeles County. It's about 8 miles from the coast, which is nice. And the USDA plant hardiness zone is 10A, so stuff's going to grow there.
You can plant whatever you want.
So when we look through the prior ownership, we see some interesting things. This was initially sold in 2017 in a trust for $1.6 million. Then listed in 2022 for $3.5 million. Moved over into a different trust, which probably caused the reset on the taxation, and now listed for $2.95 million. So that's a pretty steep discount. So one of the things you have to deal with from a psychology of the seller is either A, they're desperate to move it, or B, they're mad because the price just went down $500,000 and I ain't giving you another dime. That's, who knows what you're going to run into, but those are both possible outcomes from having such a large price reduction in a property, even though it was 3 years ago. So if we look at the property taxes, there's an aberration in here in 2022 for some reason, but it's
could have been the sale of the property.
Yep. And then we've got the internal part of the property.
Modern.
I'd be afraid to put like some toast in this house because I'd be thinking it's going to mess everything up. It's very modern. And that limits your appeal. And that's great. If you love it, as my dad would say, if you like that kind of thing, then you'll like that kind of thing. Not everybody does, and that's okay. If you're going in here, chances are you like that kind of thing. So if we look at damaging events, what do we see?
2 wind events. For those of you paying attention to the news, yes, that's exactly when the LA fires were.
And luckily the winds were blowing in the other direction, away from the property. Had they been blowing onshore, but a 65-mile-an-hour wind onshore is pretty unusual for this area, then it would have gone the other way. Hence the wildfire risk for this location.
Yep.
So we've got a 9-year-old roof, 80-year concrete tile. It's all good. So we don't have a picture of it because it's part of the condo association. So from a structural standpoint, you got some termites and you got some water hardness. As anyone who lives in Southern California knows, it's a long way from the Colorado River into Los Angeles. So the water hardness is an issue that will invalidate some of your warranties if you're not careful. But otherwise, it's not a ton there, which is nice.
Not a lot to be afraid of.
Yep. Here's all the permits. We got a few.
11 days ago. Look at that.
Yeah. Look at that. Mechanical systems up 11 days ago.
So somebody's doing something.
We had just a couple of pretty faces here. We're actually digging this stuff out, making it appear as quickly as we can. So 11 days ago, there was a HVAC permit issued for this location. So you want to check and make sure, see what's going on, all that good stuff. And it may be associated with a condo building. It's a little hard to tell sometimes, but it's a question you should ask. Our goal here is not to say you should or should not buy a condo or a property. Our goal here is to say, here's the questions that you should ask to make sure that you don't get screwed in the buying of a property. That's how I would say it. John would say it more elegantly. So we've got lots and lots of permits. There's no flood risk at the property, but you can see right here, there's a wash down there.
It's close.
So it's close. It's not enough to impact your property, but it's close. There's no lomas and lomas, but you're 260 feet away, less than 100 yards away from the ditch that can fill up with water. Because as much as you have wildfire risk, you also have a lot of water risk because it's a canyon, and that's what happens. So like we said, earthquake and wildfire, pretty much everything else is nice. Crime is low in this area. Any sex offenders in the area, John?
Well, one about a half a mile away, right there on the edge.
Just on the edge of our half-mile measurement, we see one. Now, there's a big freeway in the way, so, you're not going to have somebody walking into your house, but something to keep an eye on. What do we got in terms of, this is fun. I always love this particular element. What's the number one thing on here?
Natural disaster resilience. It applies to the city and how prepared they are to deal with it.
What does it mean?
Are bad. It means that you better pretty much be ready to get out on your own.
If there's a wildfire in the nearby area and you're hanging out, good luck. Get out. That's what it means. And there's not much public transportation because Calabasas likes it that way.
Yeah, you're not taking the bus.
Yeah, but it is very quiet. It's very quiet.
Very quiet.
Lots of points of interest within 5 miles. Child care centers, colleges, private schools, public schools. That's where everything is located. Then we've got toxic exposure, mold, PFAS, radon. There is an elevated level of radon here. Now, in a condo without a basement, you may not want to test this, but you may, just to make yourself feel better. And if it is elevated, you should take it out because radon, as repeated listeners know, is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the U.S. If we look at contaminated sites, there's a couple right nearby. So we've got electrical transmission lines. We've got an underground storage tank at the Motion Picture and Television Fund. It's 1/3 of a mile away. If that's leaking, then it can be problematic. But again, not as much as if you're on city sewer.
Yep.
Which you are.
Sooner or later, all underground storage tanks leak.
Yes. Much as you might not like it, they all leak. Good fire protection, good medical response, okay law enforcement response. It's the days of 1 Adam 12 are kind of over. So sometimes it takes a little while to get response from the county. Health and safety centers for people who are concerned about those sorts of things. There's fire stations that are nearby. There's hospitals that are nearby within a few miles. So that's pretty good coverage for that. And then the estimated utility costs are a couple $100 a month for this location. You could save that with solar, but since it's a condo, you can't always get solar.
It's a condo. Let's be serious. Yeah. You're not going to use that much.
Yeah. And then you've got, listen, in a modern apartment, who knows? You might keep the air conditioning on freezing cold, which would...
so, I mean, you don't have a lot of heat to overcome.
Yeah, that's true. Except for the hot air that you might be generating. Like my house needs a lot of air conditioning because I generate so much hot air. Insurability outlook, it's about $440 a square foot to replace it. So your, contents are going to be an order of magnitude less than the sales price. So whatever insurance policy you get should be fine for covering the location, unless you've got some, a closet full of Rolexes or something like that, in which case you might want to get a rider for jewelry.
Well, if you're living in Calabasas, that's very possible.
Yeah, you could be actually a Rolex salesperson and live in that house and just have a whole bunch of stuff with you. If you want to get insurance, you can click on a View My Quote from some of our friends at Smart Financial, and then you've got a property timeline. So pretty straightforward, pretty clean. If I'm looking at this condo, I'm like, hey, it's not bad. There's things I can do to make it certainly seem a little bit better, but otherwise, I think I'm in a pretty good spot with this condo. Let's say that you were looking at 23500 Park Sorrento, C34 in Calabasas, California. What are the top 3 things you would be concerned about with this location?
My concern would probably still be, for the 4th time, Kanye cooties. Alleged.
Explain yourself, mister. What does that mean?
Let's say that this is Kanye's condo. Just imagine yourself as Kanye. There's stuff that's gone on in this condo that you need service master to come in to take care of.
So you do
That's
your
all I'm
inspection
saying.
at do your inspection with a black light kind of a thing. That's
You're
just
gonna
what
want
he
to just, be sure. Part of the
okay.
appeal of this condo is its contents and its history
Yes.
and how it
Yes.
looks and the feel and all the rest of that. So you're going to want to make sure, if part of the cachet of purchasing this property, because it had been a Kanye property, all of the stuff comes along with it.
Yes.
You can't just say, well, so and so lived here and then change the thing out. It's not on the historical registry,
Yep.
but someday it might be.
See, that's
And
such a big it's such a big thing in LA. It's like, this used to be Clark Gable's house. I'm like, yeah, so? It's like, no, nobody ever says it used to be Bob Frady's house. It's like, they're like, so?
not yet.
You know,
Not
it's like,
yet.
holy cow. But it's a big thing and there's a premium that you're paying for. So that's number one. What's number two?
So, number two, I'm going to make sure that I know how to get the hell out. You're living in an area that is prone to earthquakes and wildfire. And wildfire,
Mhm.
by far, is more of a risk. And you need to be able to figure out, I got to do this pretty much on my own because the city itself is not good at dealing with these events. The condo itself should be perfectly fine, but they're not going to let you stay in the case of an event. So you should be looking at, how do I get out? It's 101. There aren't a lot of options from that location. So you got to be, comfortable with that thought that, hey, what do I do if? Third thing that I would definitely want to look into is how well funded the HOA is.
Now, one of us is an HOA manager.
One of us is, and is, on two HOA boards. I am the board for one HOA, and I'm on a board of another HOA. And the funding of the HOA determines how much is going to come out of your pocket in case of a special assessment. If they're
Mhm.
properly funded, there should be no special assessments unless it is really off the charts. So you'd want to know, how well funded they are, where they are with their reserve study, all of the pieces and parts that go into it. Because this is a good sized building. There are multiple units. And you're taking care of the structure, you're taking care of the pool, you're taking care of the spa, you're taking care of the gym. There's a lot of features that go along with this condo, all of which you're paying for on a monthly basis. And you want to make sure, one, that you're going to use them, but two, that everything is, copacetic, and should something go bad, they're not going to come knocking on your door asking you to write a check for 50, 60, 100K.
So if I were looking at buying this property, there were three things I would be concerned about. Is number one, do I want to pay the premium that they're asking for in terms of the market value? So they're asking for something that's between $400,000 and $500,000 more than the market value. So do I want to pay that just for the honor of owning the alleged Kanye condo? So that's number one. Do I want to pay the premium? Number two is, there's a size discrepancy. I would investigate that size discrepancy to make sure that everything that was done is copacetic with the city, because that will get inspected at some point, and you're going to either end up paying more taxes or you're going to end up having to change things, and nobody likes that. And then the third is my water heater strapped down? Maybe I have a tankless one. What has been done to prepare for the events of earthquake and wildfire for this location? So yeah, but overall, I'd feel comfortable in saying maybe I can work a little deal. Maybe I can get a discount. Maybe I can get some things thrown in, but it's been sitting for a little while. So why is the biggest question I suppose I would have. But other than that, it doesn't look too bad. Not too bad at all.
I see it as a future Bob Frady address.
Oh, no. 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 I don't want to live in a condo unless I'm old. I want to. If I'm going to move into a condo, it's going to be an assisted living condo. They got nurses running around and stuff like that. Clean up the drool off my chin. So that's our show for today. Subscribe because it makes us feel better about ourselves. If you are even thinking about buying a property and you want to put this power to work for you, go to PropertyLens.com and get a report. It's worth the money. For this week's episode of Property of the Week with PropertyLens, I'm Bob Frady.
I'm John Siegman.
Till next time.